Okay, sorry about the wait. We're gonna start now. I would be sort of like a moderator for this session, but I'll wait for you guys to run it. But yes, so I'm going to start the recording now. Thank you. Good morning once more. Please, can we start by getting introductions? I'll start from Patrick of the session speakers.
Right, Erefa, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Patrick. I have about 12 years HR experience. I'm currently heading the HR function here at the company Tenax Marine. We're an oil and gas service provider, provide marine services, energy trading. So I head the HR function for both the Marine Services Division as well as the Energy Trading Division. Thank you.
Can we have Yinka?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, good morning, actually. My name is Yinka Kwane, and I am the Group HR Director for an organization called Game Analytics. We are responsible for dealing with the analytical side of mobile phone games. I also have a dotted line report to a larger conglomerate called Mobvista. It's our Chinese parent company, and I work closely with another 4 organizations. I do the entire gauntlet of the HR function, from recruitment, selection, onboarding, through learn and development, organizational change for these 5 different organizations that are based across the globe, from China and Japan through to the EMEA region and also in the United States. And that's me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Shineru?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Erefa, for having me. My name is Chinura Alexifei. I'm the People and Culture Director at Japan Tobacco International. I'm responsible for Nigeria and the West African markets, and responsible for the end-to-end human resource function of the organization. I've been in HR for the past 10 years.
Okay, thank you. So interesting topic that we have here. Do you want to do an intro to what your take on this topic? I'll start with you, Chinoro, and we would take you to the next person.
Okay, so employee experience, employee engagement is something that is big on the agenda for not just HR, but the entire organization as a whole. And especially in such a time as this, the era of digital transformation, the changes that are happening to technology, and the need for businesses to adopt and adapt these new technologies to enhance the employee life cycle, to enhance the customer experience as well. So it's a really interesting topic, and I'm looking to share my views on this as we go on in this session.
Okay. And Yinka, any intro to the topic from you?
Yes, I think this is a very interesting topic, similar to what you were just saying. It's quite a new area. I think within the world of work, we are seeing more and more employees give their views on what it is like to go through a recruitment and selection process. And HR has had to work closely with marketing to deal with employer branding, to ensure that the customer experience, or a lot of what we've learned in marketing through customer experience, is now being implemented in the candidate experience. And in fact, there is a new branch, I would say, of HR called, we've had UX, user experience. Now I'm hearing a lot about CX, candidate experience through the recruitment and selection process. And it is, I said, it's quite an interesting, quite a new area. And I suppose I want to share my experiences creating such a system, as well as having been through some very good and I would say some very poor recruitment, selection, and onboarding processes as well. And also my experiences doing this process in a slightly different manner for organizations which are based around the globe, because we need to consider the cultural aspect, not only internally within the company, but actually of the countries or nationalities that we're working within. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ika. Patrick, any intro into this topic?
Yeah, so this topic, employee engagement, employee experience, these topics have been they've been with us, they've been part and parcel of HR, I'd say from time immemorial. However, what's unique about discussion is there's been some game-changing events, the digital transformation. I do not want to belabor the COVID-19 catalyst. However, like I keep on saying when I talk about this topic, we have new wineskins, so we cannot, if I may use that parable, we cannot pour old wine in new wineskins, if I may borrow from that analogy. So the rules of the game have changed, so to speak. A new era is upon us, and we need to look at this this challenge with a new pair of lenses. So that's why I would say it's quite an interesting discussion, and it's really, really necessary we have a discussion around these topics based on the new set of rules that we're playing right now.
Okay, it's interesting that you've mentioned, obviously, there's no conversation that we can have at this time that we're not going to talk about COVID, because COVID has been a great accelerator to most of the things we are here today. Patrick, you've been at events twice before, and it's usually in a brick and mortar event, and everybody gets to see, so you can see the faces of the people you're speaking with, you can tell from their emotion, you know, because even now as I'm speaking to you, you might see me, but my body language, you can't really see, you can't, you know. So COVID-19 has been an accelerator to most of the things that, as you said, being on the back burner and things like that. So in this kind of era, how do we manage employee experience? You know, we've seen in digital transformation, that session was there before COVID. So it's BC and COVID. So we're in COVID era, we haven't gone past COVID. But I'm sure the conversations we'll have had in April without COVID won't be the same conversation we're having today, because now we are managing employees in a fully digital era. Because I'm sitting at my desk here, Inka is in England talking to us from his desk. Chinero is probably, are you at home?
Yes, I am.
Yes, so she's speaking, which in April, she'll have had to rush from her office, do a session. She won't be able to interact with people at the event. She'll be rushing back because there'll be piles of work waiting for her. And Patrick would have just said, well, Erefa, I'm sorry, I thought I'll take a day, but your boss will call you and say, come back to the office, really have to do this meeting. And, you know, so suddenly it's changed. So now when you say it's changed, now we have digital. Before, were we so good at managing our employee experience, even when we had face-to-face interaction with them? Now we have to manage them in a digital era without using theory now, we're practicalizing it. So please shed some light into this for me and our participant. How do we really manage an employee experience in a digital era? And I'm going to come back to what Inka said as well, candidate experience, because I think that's a different kettle of fish. We have to also talk about that. So tell me about, how do we manage employee experience in a digital era?
All right. Can I take this question?
Please, carry on.
Okay. As the background, I won't want to just jump in to that question from the middle. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to just throw in some background into that question. So we are in this era of digital transformation, and I'd like to just ask, how did we get here? You know, I don't want to belabor this topic, but I mean, this digital transformation, some people also call it the fourth industrial revolution. It's come on the vanguard of this fourth industrial revolution. What is this fourth industrial revolution? It's a fusion of technology, really, that's really blurred the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. So we now have things like nanotechnology, supercomputers, AI, bots, robots, and basically smarter and more mobile technology. That is the digital transformation. What has been, to tie to your question, what's been the impact of this digital transformation on business, so to speak? And I'd say it's affected business, and from a HR perspective, I'd say it's affected business three W's. What are these three W's? These three things have changed, and this change, I call it a genie that's come out of the bottle and it's not going back in. It's affected work. It's affected the workplace. It's affected the workforce. What has changed in work? The World Economic Forum says, I mean, within the next 4 to 5 years, about over 50% of work done in organizations would be automated. So the first set of jobs, and that makes about more than half of all the jobs in the United States of America, case in point. That, I believe, will be cascaded all over the world. So the work in this new era is going to be a partnership between human and automation, be it bots, be it robots, be it computers. There will be a larger degree of partnership between the human workforce and machines. How does that impact the workforce? So the workforce, I mean, I would say in this digital era, the very social contract between employers and employees has really altered dramatically. We are going to experience a rethink in our talent models as a whole. We need to rethink as HR professionals fabric of our talent models. What do I mean? There will be, or there is rather, a change between your traditional organizational employees to the contract. And I mean, we all know the gig economy right now. It's becoming more and more prevalent. So, I mean, as HR professionals, we need to start, thinking ahead to see how these changes are going to impact the social contracts between our organizations and the employees. And finally, the workplace. So organizations really are now able to orchestrate a range of options. Like you mentioned, you have participants, you have others working from, previously we used to work from, traditional collocated workplaces to what we now have as completely distributed, and dependent virtual interactions. So these three changes ushered in by this digital era have altered, what we think and what we previously used to look at, the lenses we used to look at employee experience, employee engagement. So those changes they've happened, and there's no reset button, there's no going back to status. This is the new normal, and we just have to deal with it.
Thank you, Patrick, for that insightful contribution. I'm just going to jump to Yinka's perspective, because Yinka works outside of Nigeria, so it'd be interesting to get your perspective on. And I also know that you've worked remotely for a long time, and you've managed remote employees. So maybe you have a different perspective. And since you were already doing pre-COVID, and what has it been? What are the changes been post-COVID?
Sure. What I would say is a lot of what Patrick has said is actually it's very prevalent, and there are great similarities between what Patrick is mentioning with the fourth industrial revolution, the importance of the psychological contract, and also how we connect with each other. One thing I would say is, I would say one of the, when I was thinking about this, I was looking at some of the reasons why people had been, their request for remote or flexible working had been, it had been denied previously. And I suppose the biggest thing relating to that is, or was, trust, and it still remains trust. It is a case of, is this person actually working? If that person is working, are they working to the same capability that they were working while they were in the office? Can I trust that this person is going to be putting in the same level of effort? And what exactly does that say about me? What does it say about them? And what does it say about our relationship? And I think that is something that has really, it's really been tested, or it's been forced upon us in organizations during this COVID-19 situation. Now, in relation to the trust element, as I said, I think that is something that we have had to think about a lot more as managers and also as even team members. And I've personally had to have sessions with the managers in the companies that I work with, telling them or informing them about the differences in which they will have to interact with their team members. You are going to have some element of blind faith that this person is indeed working, that that person is going to continue to deliver the same level of work that you expected of them previously. I think that is some training that is very, very necessary. If you think, well, maybe that doesn't relate to me, I've done many of these conference calls, and I'm sure you're the same. At the end of them, you might find yourself waving at the person to, and if you think about it very rationally, that's quite ridiculous, because you're both saying goodbye. Both of you know that you're saying, but the reason for that is we have to actually accentuate our body language. The scientific reason or justification is because we're accentuating our body language. We are making up for the fact that you only see certain parts of me. You can't read the rest of my body language, and that is because we are looking for, even if it's subconsciously, ways to build better connections with each other and to read each other's true intentions and true motivations. So I've had, as I said, sessions with our managers explaining that you're going to have some faith in your team members. You are not going to have the same level of interactions that you're going to have with them. There is going to be something lost during these because there's a lack of face-to-face communication. The commonly cited statistic around communication is that roughly 70%, I mean, this particular study is a bit iffy. The person who wrote it in the 1970s was talking about face-to-face communication, how much is given off through things like the words, the tone, and the body language. Body language takes up 70% of that. If you cannot see 3/4 of the person that you're speaking to, you're losing a significant aspect of the body language. We're relying a lot more as well on textual communication, and you cannot get tone in text communication. There are only so many smiley faces that you can put in your text so that it doesn't appear aggressive, so that you are appearing assertive and direct without questioning the person too much or making them feel undermined or making them feel, as I said, that lack of trust. So there needs to be that element of training. I think it's highly, highly necessary. Another thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that we don't actually often recognize, but it's very, very pertinent, is the opposite end of the scale, and that is stress and burnout. The evidence suggests that actually people work more hours, people do more when they are working from home. There is, again with the statistics, I think there's one very, very good study which looked at call center workers in China who were moving to from remote working or office working, and they saw the difference. They found that on average, a person working remotely is more productive by around 13%. And the majority of that increase in productivity is not because people are necessarily happier. They are slightly, that has an effect. But the reason is very, very simply, people work more hours. instead of spending that time during your commute, especially in places like Nigeria with the huge long traffic, people would spend that time. Let me just log on and quickly check my emails. I'm in bed, but I have my laptop with me. Let me just send this quick message. And that is actually something that we as HR professionals need to look at. It's an invisible aspect. Managers are thinking, I'm not trusting this person, are they working? But actually, as I said, people are working more. We have noticed there's an increase in stress, there's an increase in burnout during this period. In the UK, I've been working from home now since the 16th of March. In the UK, it was around, so people have been at home now for, for several months. And in my office, very, very clearly, I can see that there is burnout, there is becoming that detachment, and it's trying to get ahead of that curve, get ahead of that before it comes into place. So I again have had training sessions with the team, with the managers. Managers, this is what you should be looking for when your team member is getting stressed. Co-workers, this is what you should be looking for. Managers, this is how you have those conversations. Team workers, this is how you make sure that you don't move from stress to burnout, that you take adequate rest. Please do not overwork. We're now actually almost begging people to take lunch breaks, to go outside for a walk, because you might not realize it, but as I said, many people are overworking. So those are the two aspects. It is making managers realize they need to have some blind faith and really trust their employees and understanding that. And it is training everybody in the workforce to recognize the signs of stress, the signs of burnout, and how to adequately fend these off before they become real problems and before they become, chronic within the organization. I'd say those are the main elements for me.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to go to Chinaro, and I also know that the Nigerian Japanese, it's obviously you have a merge, so you've worked with remote workers, and so obviously remotely. Now, on the back of what Yinka said, getting employees when they are stressed out. So when you have a burnout or stressed out employee, they're not likely to be an engaged employee. So coming on the back of that, how would you say with all
Sorry.
this?
Sorry, can you come again? My network just became unstable. Please take that again.
All right, that's fine. So I was saying that on the back of what Yinka just said,
Yeah.
burnout, getting employees, managing their stress. And I said that a stressed employee clearly is not an engaged, he's not going to be as engaged as, it's just like the world we lived in Lagos where we had to go through traffic. So sometimes you keep asking somebody, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? And the person can't really put and say, this is why I'm not productive. This is because I know some people wake up in Lagos at 4 o'clock. They're in traffic as early as 4:30. They don't get off Third Mainland Bridge. They get off Third Mainland Bridge just before the traffic starts. Third Mainland Bridge traffic starts from 5:30. So they want to beat that 5:30 traffic. They want to get to work. So they get to work early. They put their head on their desk or in their car have a nap, but they still, so that removes that engagement level from that employee. Now, Yinka has now mentioned some parts. Now they don't even want to stop to take lunch because, again, we are not very trusting employers in Nigeria. We want to make sure, even though you're working from home, see what people are doing. You're checking up on them. Did you send that email? So, in the effort to overcompensate so that my employer knows I'm working from home, I'm doing everything, they might get burnout. So, how do you make them engage? What are the things that we could do to make it better?
Okay, so I do agree with Yinka that this period of the lockdown since March and working from home has been really challenging for people, and people are really stressed out. So we've been at home for a couple of months. The lines between home and work have been completely removed. So we're working and living at home, and people are getting stressed. But this can only get better based on the maturity of the leadership of the organization. So the leadership of the organization need to understand that we are all going through a crisis. So everyone is trying to make the best of this situation. So when you are having expectations of your employees, you need to have these expectations while being realistic. So some people are at home, some people are looking after children, elderly parents, and they are working. So that whole need of checking whether someone is online, whether someone has sent an email, it's unnecessary. The world has moved beyond that. You need to trust your employees and trust them enough to do what is supposed to be done. So it's been a challenge trying to get people engaged from March till now, and looking at the fact that we might be like this till the end of the year and until God knows when. But we have tried to ensure that we have regular calls with employees. So regular sessions, regular meetings to keep the team together, because then there's the need for human interaction. I mean, employees feel better when they are relating with their colleagues. They have a need, they can walk to the person's office and look through this, but now it's a lot different. So these calls help to foster teamwork. And we have had to have, like, I use my organization for an example. We've had to have a lot of sessions that are outside of work, outside of the daily responsibilities. We've had sessions that relate to an employee's well-being, mental health, financial well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, all of this. So we've had sessions like this. So helping employees cope, trying to help employees cope while keeping them engaged. So when we started out at the lockdown, we kind of started a habit of calling employees frequently, every single employee. How are you doing? What's going on? How's the security in your area? Initially, at the start of the lockdown, there was this rise of robbery and security unrest. So how are you doing? What's going on? If you need security backup, we make this available, right? Just to ensure that people feel like, okay, we work for an organization that cares about us. And that way they'll go ahead to deliver. So my organization cares about me and they care about my well-being. So I have to deliver. So, and then we're trying to encourage managers to understand that while people are at home, that doesn't mean you should send them emails by 11 p.m. or you should have meetings by 12. It doesn't mean because they're home and their laptop is there anyway. You need to understand that they're at home, they're leaving, they're working, and they still have their personal responsibilities. So we need to draw the line. We've even encouraged people to go on leave. So go on leave, even though you cannot go, you cannot travel, you can't do anything, but take that time of work to breathe, because everybody needs to breathe. Everyone needs to breathe. It's like an overload. There's an overload of information, overload of work. Everything's all up in your space. We're encouraging people to go on leave. Go on leave, take that time off, take the time off if you have. So it really, really depends on the leadership, the maturity of the leadership to be able to encourage people to be able to drive this within the organization. So it depends largely on the majority of the leadership of the organization. So keeping employee engaged, it's an everyday journey. It's an every day we're thinking of newer ways. And then we try to make it employee led. So it's not HR led, it's employee led. What do you want us to do? How do you want us to act? How do you want us to, what are the areas you want us to concentrate on and things like that. So those are some of the ways that we try to keep people engaged. And that way people put their best foot forward every day. Every day when they wake up to work, they put their best foot forward. So they're not going to the office, but they're working and they're engaged. They work for a company that cares about them and all of that. So
Okay.
there's
All
this
right.
noise
Thank
at the
you.
background.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly add something there? I'm so glad you mentioned that actually, Chinoru, about about care and responsibilities, because when we think about the COVID-19 situation, there is a tendency to think that we're all affected almost equally. But actually, those with care and responsibilities have been affected so much more. And even the most early studies that are looking at right now that have been completed are showing that women are by far more affected in this crisis, because the majority of caring duties, I'm not sure how it is in Nigeria, but I'm guessing that schools closed, maybe closed as well. And who normally does the teaching of children at home? A lot of that falls on the mother. Who continues to do the cooking? Who does the housework? A lot of that falls on the mother. If another thing that's very, very interesting that they've noticed is, even in simple meetings, who does a child go to first if they have a question to pester them? And it's normally the mothers. And if there is a situation that basically a lot more responsibilities have now fallen on women in this period. And I think that is something that I have learned. I mean, because obviously I'm not a woman, but I've learned through reading a lot of literature to think actually we do need to support our female caring employees that bit more and offer that bit more in terms of support, not just relying on stereotype, but because it's most likely to be the case. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's something we have noticed as well.
All right, thank you. It's very interesting that you're talking about, because we've had jobs as mothers, as teachers, as doing everything. Women, particularly, it's been, like I said to my kids, they've closed for the year. I said, just give me 2 days, because at least before they could come and talk to me as I'm in a meeting, but now they can't even interrupt. So I said, just give me, and tomorrow you have me all day. We can do everything we need to do. And those are the sacrifices we all have to make as. First of all, I say when I'm in a meeting, if it was a virtual meeting, I'll say, please, we're going to start this meeting in this order with you understanding that, first of all, I'm a parent, so we might get a bit of interruption. But again, I can say that because I sort of work for myself and mine. But think about it from an employee. Imagine your managing director was there. Would you say, oh, I'm a mother first? And, so you keep washing your kids up and everything's just, it all adds to the whole level of our engagement in a digital era. But I'm going to go back now and ask a question on the candidate experience. We are going to close shortly, but I just want us to, how do we manage candidate experience in a digital era? We spoke about employee, we spoke about care and all the things that we need to do. And more importantly, it's important, just reiterating what Yinka said, it's important that as for us as managers, as leaders, to trust our employer, because trust is the currency of the economy of the world at the moment. You have to trust that when I send you an email, I trust that you read it. Even if you haven't read it, I trust that whatever I've asked that you should do will be sent at the right time, not getting on the phone, the micromanager. Did you get my email? Okay, go online now. So let me see you. I'm not seeing you online, Some people have actually used, they built a system where their employees have to clock in and they know when you are. Okay, I know my husband's worked remotely most of his life because he works in banking and security. So they give them those security. So they know when you are clocking and working online. I know some organizations have taken that now into where you need to be online. And obviously, employees who have found a way around it where they just switch off their video, you can't really see them and they're there. You think they're just doing what they have to do. So, but if you trust that we're adults and we're going to do what we're going to do, we should be able, I'm just trying to cap everything everybody has said, but I want to end on a note of asking about the candidate experience. Candidate experience is different in Nigeria than in every part of the world. And I'll say that because I started my career as a recruiter and I've worked as a recruiter in 2 different continents. And the recruitment I did in the UK is different from the recruitment that you see in Nigeria, because in recruitment in Nigeria, we think that as a recruiter or as an HR manager, you're a god because of the unemployment. And we don't care about the employment experience. Even in the UK, we struggle for feedback as a recruitment agency, struggle for feedback from line manager, but doesn't mean that when the candidate comes into the line manager's office, they will be treated properly. But in Nigeria, we can keep candidates waiting for hours. And I've also seen that translate into Zoom meetings where a line manager sets up a Zoom interview and we're struggling to get, and the person says, oh, my calendar is full, I didn't know. But you understand what I mean? Oh, I did, can we reschedule? Because they think it's Zoom. It's even easier for you to reschedule than face-to-face meetings. So how do we bring a good experience into our candidate experience? Patrick, you want to go?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question because let me address that question from 2 perspectives. So we'll look at this candidate experience, pre the digital transformation and now in this digital transformation, what the candidate experience will most likely be going forward. So pre-digital, let's look at attraction. So pre the digital transformation era, employees, were typically investigated by the potential employers. We do our background check, we do our reference checks, we do all the checks just to investigate the employee's history. But right now, it's a 2-way investigation. So you now have prospective candidates looking up the organization's digital brand. You now have prior to now, of course, recruitments were done through announcements, job boards, papers. Right now, you have more of social recruitment. Recruitment is done here in Nigeria largely now on social media platforms. Even when some companies, not too long ago, about some weeks ago, a company reached out to me for a vacancy, and I was surprised. I asked, "Oh, how did you get my profile for this vacancy?" And they said they advertised the vacancy in the papers. And I immediately said, if you advertise this vacancy in the papers, I clearly didn't see it. I clearly didn't apply for it. I can't remember the last time I picked up the physical paperback newspaper, what more looking through vacancies. Then instantly I recollected that, oh, there was a vacancy and it was on LinkedIn. I just clicked the inbox apply, and I guess it was automated some way, somehow. And that's how, so you have more of social recruitment going on. You have headhunting going on various social websites. I know of a particular candidate who got to the final stage of an interview with one of the big oil firms in IOCs in Nigeria. At the final stage of the interview, this is here in Nigeria, they did a background check on the candidate's social media profile. And it was discovered that this particular candidate, while the candidate was in his final year in university, he was very active in the student union government, and he put on his Facebook and made a Facebook post that he could never work for the IOCs, any of the IOCs in Nigeria. And they pulled it up right here in Nigeria. And that was how the candidate lost that opportunity. Another trend that's coming on, gaining a lot of steam, you now have automated interviews. So you now have machines that do interviews. I know there's a recruitment firm that actually specializes in preparing candidates for automated interview sessions with these bot recruiters. So that's a new trend. Of course, physical interviews are fast becoming a thing of the past. You now have interviews. I mean, 5 years ago, it was a nice to have doing virtual interview sessions, but right now it's the new norm. For a recruiter, I'm sure Erefa, you would appreciate that as a recruiter now, even here in Nigeria, it will be out of the ordinary asking a candidate to come to your office for a physical interview, especially with what's going on right now. So, I mean, and this cascades even right down to onboarding, the final onboarding. I have a friend that just got a job, and this was during the lockdown. She resumed in her new job during the lockdown, and they had virtual onboarding. It took about a full week. You now have self-service. So this virtual onboarding that's taking the place of the previous physical introduction, the sites, the physical introduction, the tour around facilities. You now have virtual reality. So all these have changed the game really in the landscape. I hope this was able to address this question.
All right, thank you. I think we shouldn't. We've got past the time, so I'll just take a closing from Chinero, and then Yinka will take the final close byline. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
Okay. So thank you for this session. Sadly, we don't have enough time. I think employee experience, employee engagement should be the priority of every organization. And the employee experience looks at the entire journey of an employee organization, right from when he applies for a role to his exit interview. It's something that we should prioritize, because when the employee has a good experience in the organization, it automatically affects the engagement level of the organization. Now, we need to shift from the point where we look at it as HR's responsibility, because an employee's experience involves the interaction with everybody in the organization, so his line manager and his colleagues. and everything, the fiscal environment of the organization. So it's a shared responsibility of HR, of leadership, of line managers. It should be our priority to ensure that people have a good experience in the organization, because when they have a good experience, it affects their output, it affects the outcome, it affects the overall organizational goal. It all contributes to them putting their best foot forward to ensure that the company achieves all that is set to achieve. I know of companies that are doing well during the lockdown, recording increase in their volumes and because the people are engaged and they're committed. So it should be a priority for every organization.
All right, thank you very much, Chinara. Yinka, any last words?
I think I will again just actually echo what was just said about about experience. And what I will add to that is about also managing people's expectations and being very honest and as transparent as you can. I think if you use that, think we're honest, we're transparent, and we are thinking of that individual's experience throughout, whether it is somebody that you're trying to hire through the candidate experience, whether it is an employee that has been with you all along. If you have those basic principles, I think you can, as Chinuru was saying, have good levels of engagement. We can obviously there's a lot of information and resources and studies around engagement of people that are currently employees, but the difference between engagement of somebody who is trying to come into your organization and somebody who isn't is that a person who's engaged is going to do more research. They're going to show their passion for their field, for your company. And personally, I like interviewing somebody that really wants the job. It makes it so much more wonderful to see somebody across from you smiling, pretty much, they're almost dancing because they're that excited. And I think that has helped if we do focus on creating that good experience. I also like something you said, I've not seen that before, and that is, it is not just HR's responsibility. It is everybody's responsibility. We get individuals who are writing about the jobs that exist or about possible job opportunities from our customer support to our customer support because they don't know who to write to. If the customer support team doesn't consider candidate experience or client experience, that's going to be off-putting. If it's a physical interview and you have the receptionist who puts that person in a bad mood, that's going to show in the interview. If when the person goes, they speak to somebody in the recruitment team that is not that good, that's going to show. If they have an interview with a bad manager, that's going to show in their assessment of the company. So it's very important to get everybody on board and say, this is not just HR. We are not the sole response guardians of the candidate or employee experience. It is everybody's responsibility to make sure that everybody that has any kind of interaction with our company goes away with a positive feeling and a good memory of having interacted with the company.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for a lovely session. I don't think we have any questions, so I would like to say thank you for your time this afternoon, and hopefully, COVID permitting, we'll see you next year physically.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? Sir? I'm good. How have you been? I've paused the recording. The session starts in.
Overcome challenges.
I know, but you've risen to the occasion. I've seen I've joined some of the webinars. It's been very interesting. So
right. Good to have that feedback.
It's been very interesting. I joined too. It's good.
Yeah, today we have also one, but I assume you must be very busy.
Yes, so I won't be able to join this one. Yes, and I'm tired. I just need to sleep. It's so tedious organizing a virtual event. It's people don't keep to time. People are not there. The attendees, they don't have good timekeeping skills of virtual event. So we're starting in 3 minutes. I'm going to get us, because we're also streaming live on the platform. It's being streamed live. I'll just confirm that people are joining and I'll take it from there. Okay. Bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna go for a second.
No problem. I am making my screen arranged.
I'm back. I know you don't have much time as you've got other.
I will have 30 minutes for you. Hopefully
Yes,
we can cover all the questions that we sent.
30 minutes is fine. I just want to make sure we have enough people in the room. There's maybe another 2 minutes, we'll start.
Okay.
I've checked on YouTube. We have a few people watching, streaming live. See.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's start. And we get some people are watching us on YouTube, and we'll just start so that I don't take much of your time. So first of all, can you tell me about yourself and what you do and what you're doing?
Okay, I am the CEO of World Humanitarian Forum. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this quite first ever occasions where we have the digital events. I have the comfort of me joining from my home, but hopefully we will be able to come together physically at some point. So thank you for inviting me. World Humanitarian Forum is the largest and most inclusive, non-partisan forum in humanitarian aid and international development. Our aim is to bring parties together to encourage dialogue and encourage cross-sector partnerships. This is how I can define World Humanitarian Forum in the shortest way.
Okay, thank you. So being a humanitarian organization in the, I'll say almost in the same range as the international NGOs, what do you think stakeholders make up for the lost ground of in the pursuit of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, for my audience? So if they don't know what the SDG is, owing to the unforeseen circumstance of COVID-19, as in what are the things that, how can we make up for the lost ground? Because for example, I knew you were supposed to host an event which was beneficial. You're going to talk about Africa, you're going to talk about the refugee situation, and COVID happened and didn't,
Yeah. SDGs are 17 goals that were created after the Millennium Development Goals. And SDGs are set to be achieved by 2030. And it's also called 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. We are in the last 10 years of Sustainable Development Goals, I mean, achieving them. And as you have mentioned, COVID-19 has had great impact on the whole world, not only on the delivery of the SDGs, but also on the economies. It has been quite unprecedented and at the same time quite devastating impact COVID-19 caused. So in the achievements of sustainable development goals, of course, there has been an impact. I've been speaking with people, as we just discussed, in the World Humanitarian Forum, we have initiated WHF Digital Series, where we interview with the leading humanitarian organizations and also international development community leaders. And we all have the consensus that, yes, we need to deliver SDGs, but maybe we will prioritize some of them, like SDG 17, which is partnerships, and which is also one of the cores of World Humanitarian Forum. If we can achieve partnerships, SDG 17, it can open up the gate to achieve other SDGs as well. Like we can make progress on SDG 5, on gender equality, on online systems, can help to deliver quality education. So what the world of international development and humanitarian aid is now focusing on delivering, and at least defining which ones should be prioritized so that we can get some progress on the overall arcing structure of the SDGs. The purpose here is to achieve on the maximum amount and should be through widest possible participation. And on the other hand, more than ever, people and countries everywhere rely on the United Nations to rise to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a massive human crisis. And the Secretary General has emphasized that the creativity of the response must match the unique nature of the crisis, and the magnitude of response must match its scale. As I said, moving ahead on the decade of action for SDG implementation, the recovery from the COVID-19 is actually an opportunity for the governments and stakeholders alike to build back better their societies.
Okay, thank you for that. And what is the scope of the World Humanitarian Forum, achieving some of this SDG?
As I mentioned, WHF is the largest non-partisan and independent forum. And again, partnerships, SDG 17 is within the main scope of World Humanitarian Forum, because we believe that the strength of cross-sector partnerships will not only deliver on the SDGs, but they will also help us to shape a better world for the future. And also, as an organization led by a woman, which is me, gender equality is in our DNA. And I see here two very beautiful ladies on my screen, and it's encouraging. Inequalities are all around the world, and we are fighting against all to make the world a more even place. But in many cases, gender issues are in the core, in the heart of these inequalities. We see women leaders are doing far better job in the fight against coronavirus, like Angela Merkel, Jacinda Ardern. Unfortunately, the examples are very limited because it takes courage, it requires sacrifice and very hard work to get to that point. And many women do not find that chance, unfortunately, in their lives. Progress is happening, but not fast enough. And according to a report World Economic Forum published, it's going to take 208 years to achieve actual gender equality. I think it's a bit too much. And, yeah, a bit too much. And we just need to really push hard to deliver on the gender equality.
And how can organizations align their strategic plan with the SDG? I know that WHF is already doing that. So if you're going to give us a blueprint as an organization, how do we align our plan?
Yeah, I think it is a must because SDGs give us the roadmap how we can be more resilient and stronger against the shocks and crises like COVID-19. For each goal, there is a roadmap defined by the multilateral stakeholders, governments, and local actors. So I think implementing SDG from bottom to up, from micro to macro, it will just make them stronger, and it's going to make the organizations stronger, really. SDGs are so global, and every society, every government, and every organization can play part in it. The biggest alignment would start with placing SDGs as the culture, and individuals are embracing it, then the organizations in the core will follow. I think it's layer by layer and from outer circle to inner. SDGs have the power to shape the future and a better tomorrow for all of us, really.
Okay. Now, since the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, is really based on international cooperation, and is it safe to say the rise of nationalism is a threat to the existence of these goals? Case in point is the US pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. What are the impacts of this on the SDG goals, which we have 10 more years to achieve, 2030?
Yeah. Paris Climate Agreement is about one of the SDGs, and US has announced that they will be withdrawing from World Health Organization. Yes, nationalism is a threat, not only in the delivery of the SDGs, but on the international cooperation as an overall. We can get to a better point, not individually, but collaboratively. So international cooperation is very, very much important. But instead of nationalism, yes, it's a threat, but localization is not. I see US move was a political one, to be honest. And as I said, yes, it's a big threat. If the governments will start pulling out of these corporations or multilateral stakeholder organizations, then it's going to be a very challenging time for the world. However, if we can utilize localization and make the people embrace SDGs, I think no political act can put them in danger. And localization was one of the outcomes of the World Humanitarian Summit, which took place in 2016. It was more on the humanitarian action reportings, but localization's importance was underlined as an outcome of that event as well. And in the last conversation I had with the president of the IFRC, Mr. Francesco Rocca, he also emphasized the importance of localization, not only in the humanitarian assistance, but also in international development and in the delivery of SDGs.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, my next question is, the SDGs sufficiently adaptive to changing realities? I know you said earlier that the United Nations Secretary General said to focus on some points of the SDG in this COVID era, but that's in COVID, and we're focusing 17, gender equality and things that we can easily, get to, but there's going to be change. COVID is just one of the accelerators of the changing realities that it's going to come. And it's just unfortunate that COVID completely swept everybody, caught us unawares. Governments were confused. Again, I'm going to go back, use the UK as case in point. Cheryl also lives in the UK. You didn't know whether to stop going to work, whether to stop sitting at home. Nobody knew because everyone was confused. So as part of the SDG goals, is it sufficient? Can it be adaptive to changing realities? Because we don't know what's going to happen in December. How can we just make sure that the goals are still going to be achievable by 2030?
Yeah, I think we are all experimenting in new normal, and the new normal is being defined. As it stands, I think SDGs have proven to be universal goals that needs to be achieved to build resilience as well. In times of crisis, it becomes more evident whether a system is strong enough or not. And I think SDGs have proven to be quite strong and universal, as I said. I'm not sure if they are adapting to the changes, if that's the question, or were they so universal?
Adapting. Are they sufficiently adapting.
Sufficiently adapting
Yes.
to the changes, but or the question is, were they so universal that despite these unprecedented times, they are still covering the action points? I think SDGs will definitely help governments to build back their societies better, because it's the core of the development policies, like, you know, ending poverty, ending inequalities, developing partnerships, climate change, all these 17 goals. For some, there are too many. For some, because of the world's problems are too many, we had to have 17 goals. There is still discussion going around that, although we have 10 years left to achieve them. I think they are the very core like milestones of governments and communities to achieve for their future, really.
Okay. So my question, I'm going to ask a question and do a statement to it. So my question is there a mass buy-in into the drive for sustainability? If not, how can this be accelerated? Now, the statement I'm adding to it is, in Nigeria, we're over 200 million people, just over 200 million people. And we're going to be the third largest population in the world in another, I can't remember the number of years now. And I can tell you for a fact, some people don't know what the SDG goals are. They just don't know what, you know, so how can this be accelerated? So if I go into my village somewhere in Port Harcourt, which is an oil-rich city in Nigeria, that's where we get all the crude oil from, and I go to a particular part of Port Harcourt, River State, and I ask them what are SDGs, they don't know.
Yeah.
So how can this be accelerated?
Very good question. I think it's through education. I don't only mean education at school, but, you know, educating people around these development goals, because they are going to provide them a better future, not only for them, but also for the generations, for the future. I'm going to give you one striking example. During Millennium Development Goals and discussions, and it was a survey, as far as I can remember, took place in 2015 when we were evaluating the outcomes of Millennium Development Goals, and it was the phase to step into the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And only 4% of people in the UK population knew what Millennium Development Goals were. So I think we haven't made so much progress on that. Yes, there is a certain community speaking about these developments, you know, assistance, but this is what I've been trying to explain, and what I was meaning by, you know, on the organization's layer by layer system, from the top governments to NGOs to you know, local actors and to the public. This needs to be communicated. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to be only governments implementing the SDGs. If we do not have the individual approach, individual actions, then it's really going to be difficult. We need acceleration, definitely. We have just 10 years left, and the progress needs to be done quite a lot. This is one side. There is another issue with the impact of COVID-19. And if we cannot communicate and educate people about what SDGs are, what is the importance of it, there are some certain areas like infrastructure, smart cities. These are related to people as well, but maybe partnerships might be more on the stakeholder level, but ending poverty is something that needs to be communicated in the field. We need to speak this with people. Actually, I would want to ask that question to in one of the conversations what I will be having with the UN representatives during the UNGA, which is celebrating the 75th anniversary. So I think it's a discussion that needs to be really
it's very important. I think it's very important. And, you know, it's a very important aspect of this conversation that we are having, because I know even in Lagos, which is a commercial hub of Nigeria, ask the guy who's driving his bus as a daily source of income what the SDGs are. as far as, because he hasn't felt the impact of the sustainable development goals. So it does, you know what I mean? But we, because we know about it, we know the impact that it can give to us. We know the drive in terms of equality. For example, I'll give you an example. The Central Bank of Nigeria has mandated that no bank should, so all banks must have a ratio of women on their board. There's still a board in Nigeria that had only male in their board. Now, thanks to the SDG and the government tapping into the SDG, the central bank has said no commercial bank can be without having X percentage of women on their board. So, I mean, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, it was normal to get into a boardroom and they're all male. Now, crack it up. There's a, and I wish I had that flyer that I could share. There's a thing going on. There's a rape crisis and rape agenda stories going on. And there's a session going, I saw a session poster. They were going to talk about female rape, and they were all male. In Nigeria, it's supposed to be happening. And so it was an all-male panel going to talk about rape on female. So obviously, those people haven't bought into this equality, because women have to be, you have to treat us as equal. You have to know that they're equal. In the north of Nigeria, women are still inferior to the male. So even if they send the male to school, there's still some places where your brother will take priority to get education because you're a girl and they expect you to go get married. So that's what I'm saying in terms of acceleration. And what you said makes sense. It's education from the top to the bottom. And it's the government really, and even not government, as you said, it's partnership with corporate organizations to boost, and things like what you are doing, trying to educate, get people to form this. I know we haven't got much time, so my last question is, what is the importance of effective leadership in achieving the SDGs?
Oh, a big question, another $1 million question, really. Effective leadership, I think, is the key in achieving SDGs. We have discussed that it's not well communicated to the public, and I think the only way to be able to do it is through effective leadership. And when we discuss about leadership, most of the time people understand just one person being the leader, and you know, that person is going to do everything for us. No, I think leadership is also about community related. This is one side. And on the other side, things are easier said than done. And when world leaders signed up for the delivery of the SDGs, they did so with their really best intentions. However, when it got to the point of trying to effect the change needed, they found they didn't have the key leadership experience, knowledge, capabilities, skills required to drive that necessary transformation and deliver the change. And on the other hand, we see continuing rise of conflicts, ever increasing number of people and refugees as a result. The world is quite at stake, and we really need effective leadership to come and step in. Via effective leadership, we all need to work together to achieve the goals. Students around the world deserve it. Leadership is sometimes understood, as I said, one person being the leader, but as communities, it's time for all of us to step up and take the lead in a united way to overcome the challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheryl, any questions? Cheryl, have you got any questions to?
None, actually. Yeah. I think that was really, really quite informative for me. Yeah, but no questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Faraye, for your time. I know you've got the session to get to this afternoon. Thank you for your time. And
thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to have this discussion with you.
All right. Thank you, Faraye.
Contribute further in the future.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.